Today we're going to be talking about the difference between el pretérito and imperfecto. Now, if you've ever been confused when to use which one and what kind of situations indicate the preterite versus imperfect tense, then this video is for you, so listen carefully. The number one thing that differentiates the two is that the pretérito involves a definite time frame. What do I mean by that? There's a specific time in the past in which the action of the sentence took place. So words like ayer, una vez, la semana pasada, hace 2 años, all of these phrases are dead giveaways that you're dealing with the preterite tense because, again, they indicate a definite time frame in the past. Here's an example. Anoche yo fui al partido de fútbol. Last night I went to the soccer game. Because the action ir happened last night, which is a specific time in the past, that's why I use the preterite form fui. Okay, the second key characteristic of the preterite tense is that there's a completed action. It happened in the past and it's over. So in that last example, I went to the game and it happened last night and it's completed, right? I'm not still going anymore because it's over. Now, most sentences in the past are, by default, completed actions like this, unless there are other clues in the sentence that suggest the action is ongoing or if it's repeated, in which case you'd use the imperfect. So now let's go over the key indicators of the imperfect tense. First, if there's a general time frame, meaning that the time interval of the action is more vague, there's no clear beginning and end, unlike in the pretérito where there's a definite time you can point to in the past, right? But in the imperfecto, words such as cada vez, a menudo, siempre, raramente, all of these have a more general time frame, right? So if you see any of these phrases, anything indicating a continuous action in the past that does not have a beginning and end, then you should conjugate the verb in the imperfect. Let's do an example. De niña yo nunca blank ensalada. Since you never ate salad as a kid and never tells you that it's a general frame of time, you use the imperfecto and so it becomes yo nunca comía ensalada. However, if you're trying to say I didn't eat salad at a specific moment like yesterday, then that would be a definite time frame and a completed action, therefore a preterite sentence. So you'd say yo no comí ensalada. So the difference basically lies in the nature of the action. Okay, now that you have the holistic view of the two tenses, it's time to get a little more technical. So I'm going to tell you certain verbs in Spanish that by nature belong to either the preterite or the imperfect tense, no matter the circumstances of the sentence. So these are just words you're just going to have to memorize. In el pretérito, you've got decidir, descubrir, darse cuenta de. Now, even though you could technically try and argue against these words and say, well, deciding something or realizing something is a continuous process that doesn't have a specific beginning and end, and you'd be right, that's true, but save the logic for later and just memorize that these words are, by definition, pretérito. You've got to remember that language is complicated and not everything fits into a neat and tight box. Now, these next few are a bit more common sense kind of words. There's nacer, morir, graduarse. I mean, obviously, you're only born once, you only die once. It can't be continuous, right? So always use a pretérito for these words. Now, of course, there's a few other words like this that are always pretérito, but your teacher will likely give you a list of those words that they'll test you on. So make sure you look at that. Now, on to imperfecto. Anything that's related to el tiempo, time, will be in the imperfect. Por ejemplo, eran las 3 por la mañana. It was 3 in the morning. Remember, you never say fueron las 3. It's always eran las en el número. Another thing is emotion. If you're describing an emotional state like happy, sad, excited, etc., and it's in the past, you use the imperfect. So for example, if you're trying to say, he was sad last night, even though last night technically is a definite time frame, which is a characteristic of the pretérito, you're talking about an emotion, which is by nature general. So you'd say, él estaba triste anoche, not estuvo. Make sense? Okay, the third thing is edad, age. Anytime you're referring to someone's age in the past, you always use the imperfecto. So let's say you're translating the sentence, my sister was 14 last year. How do you say to be 14? Tener 14 años, right? So tener becomes tenía, so la oración sería, mi hermana tenía 14 años el año pasado. So this next one is super important and pretty commonly tested, so make sure you get this. When you're describing someone's personality in the past, like so-and-so was nice or he was loud, you use the verb ser and use it in the imperfecto. Entonces, in the sentence, el chico en mi clase de español, blank, gracioso. You say era, since you're saying he was funny in the past, which is a personality trait, therefore imperfect. Okay, quick recap of all the things we learned in this video. In the preterite tense, there's a specific time frame with a known beginning and an end, and the action is completed. Watch out for words like ayer, hace 3 días, el mes pasado, or anything similar, because they all trigger the preterite. As for imperfect, these verbs are in a more general frame of time that's either a habitually repeated action, so that goes with phrases like cada vez, todos los días, cada semana, or just simply a vague general time frame, which would typically involve en el pasado, cuando era niño, things like that. Okay, why don't we finish off with a few examples just to make sure we got everything down. So we're going to do a total of 6 examples, and before I tell you the answer, I'm going to pause before each one. So you have time to pause the video, and I want you to think of the answer in your head before pressing resume. Got it? Okay, the first example. El año pasado, ella blank todos los días. Okay, the first thing you always want to do is ask yourself, is this a specific or a general frame of time? Well, let's see, it starts off by saying el año pasado, which is typically a pretérito phrase, but then you keep reading and notice it says todos los días, so you're saying she ran every day of last year. And since this is a repeated action that happened continuously, it's imperfect, so you'd say corría. Now, if this part weren't here, if you scratched out todos los días, then just having el año pasado would make a pretérito, so you'd say corrió. Okay, número 2. De niño yo blank leche cada mañana. This one's pretty easy. First of all, you see de niña, which means as a child, which automatically means it's imperfect. Plus there's cada mañana, and that makes it a habitual action. So the answer is bebía. Número 3. La chica blank una letra de su tía. Now, in this sentence, they don't specify the time frame of the action. They don't tell you when the girl received the letter. And that's okay. All we need to know is that she received it and it's over and it's a completed action, right? So this sentence is in the preterite, so la respuesta es recibió. Okay, on to número 4. Cuando yo blank el cuarto, ella blank bailando. So this one's a little bit trickier since there's 2 verbs in 2 different tenses. I'd say the best thing to do in this kind of situation is to translate it in English. So that would be, when I entered the room, she was dancing. So the verb entered happened at a specific moment, since you only enter once, and after you enter, she was dancing. And the ing in dancing implies that she's been at it for some time, which is a continuous action. So that makes entrar pretérito and estar imperfecto. So the answer should be entré and estaba. This type of sentence structure is pretty common, where you have cuando and a predicate phrase, and then the second part is imperfect. Número 5. Hace 2 semanas, ella blank a pescar con su papá. Okay, this one should be pretty obvious. Hace 2 semanas means 2 weeks ago, and there's no other indicators in the sentence of the action being repeated or continuous, so the sentence is definitely preterite, so the answer is fue. Alright, last one, número 6. Blank lloviendo cuando yo blank mi decisión. So again, for this one, translate into English first. It was raining when I made my decision. Since it was raining for a continuous period of time, you conjugate estar as estaba, and made my decision is at a specific point in time, so tomar becomes tomé. Alright, that's it for pretérito versus imperfecto. If you're confused at all, leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to answer. Okay, thanks for watching and hope this helped a little.